right, let's go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our teach-in. My name is Christina Gupta, and I am an associate professor of women's gender and sexuality studies here at Wake Forest, and also one of the coordinators of Wake Forward, which is a group of progressive Wake Forest faculty, staff, and students. So first, I just quickly want to thank the co-organizers of this event, Dr. Tanisha Ramachandran, Dr. Brittany Battle, Dr. Mir Yarfitz, and especially Celeste Holcomb, who proposed the idea for this and invited most of the presenters, which he's going to talk about in a little bit. This event is part of the National Scholars Strike for Racial Justice. Scholar Strike is a mass action of higher education professionals protesting racist policing, state violence against communities of color, mass incarceration, and other manifestations of racism. And so let me encourage you all to follow #ScholarStrike on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and to engage with other teach-ins that are occurring on the Scholar Strike YouTube channel. So tonight's event is designed to give you an introduction to prison abolition work in Winston-Salem, and our hope is that this teach-in will give you an opportunity to get involved with some of the initiatives that you'll hear about here. So very quickly, I just want to tell you about the Zoom webinar format that we're using, and then give you a very quick agenda before turning it over to our first speaker. So we are using the Zoom webinar format, which is different than the Zoom meeting format, which you may be more familiar with. So as you can see, there's a group of presenters, and you can see our video and hear our audio. And then the majority of folks are attendees. So attendees, you can, there's a Q&A function where you can submit questions. And we have Dr. Ramachandran and Dr. Yarfitz are going to be monitoring the questions that are submitted. We're very tight on time. So if you're able to stick around, we will ask some of the presenters who are able to stick around to answer some of those questions between about 6 and 6:15. But we know not all of the attendees will be able to stick around that long. So our plan is we are going to be collecting all of the questions that are submitted, and we'll try to respond to them via email. Okay, and then so very briefly, the agenda for this event. We are going to start with Bailey Pittenger is going to give us a brief introduction to prison abolition. And then followed by that, Celeste Holcomb is going to introduce us to the work that's going on in Winston-Salem. And then we're going to hear from representatives of different community initiatives. So we have Siembra, North Carolina, or sorry, Siembra NZ. Then the Forsyth County Community Bail Fund, Housing Justice Now, Forsyth Court Support, Break Light Clinics with DSA, the Triad Abolition Project, Occupy Winston-Salem, and then we have Mr. Trey Stubbs is going to talk to us a little bit. His father was a victim of police violence, and then potentially, I'm not sure if they're going to be here or not. There may be somebody here from Prison Outreach Initiative. And as I said, there's a lot of folks, not a lot of time, so we may not get to that many questions, but those that we don't get to, we'll do our best to respond to via email. And also, I apologize in advance, but I'm going to be holding our panelists to strict time limits, so I apologize if I cut anybody off abruptly. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Bailey Pittenger.
Hi, everyone. My name's Bailey Pittenger. I'm one of the founding members with Triad Abolition Project, and I was one of the organizers with OccupyWS. And so I'm going to be giving kind of a brief overview of what prison abolition is. Sharing my screen now. Can everyone see this? Okay. Okay, so a brief introduction to what abolition is. This picture is from OccupyWS. You can see the sign says "We keep us safe," and that building in the background is our Forsyth County Jail. The quote is from Angela Davis's "Our Prisons Obsolete." She says, "Let go of the desire to discover one single alternative system of punishment that would occupy the same footprint as the prison system." And I chose this quote because it reaches to this idea of us personally letting go of our own desires to just abolish and working all personally to come up with these alternatives to systems of punishment. A lot of what abolition is at the beginning for many of us and throughout the process of abolition is thinking through our own personal definitions of what safety is, what punishment is, what fear is, and coming up with alternatives, and usually and hopefully leading to systems of care and systems of work that will keep us safe and reduce the power and the enforcement of policing and prison systems. So here's a definition of PIC abolition. It's the action and movement of abolishing the system, practice, and institution of policing, punishment, and systemic violence, including interpersonal vulnerabilities and displacements that keep the system going. And this is a quote from Critical Resistance, which is a abolitionist organization that's kind of done a lot of work nationwide and is really influenced by the work of Mariame Kaba. The PIC is a system that uses policing, courts, and imprisonment to solve problems. We don't agree that we need the PIC to keep us safe. Instead, we work to build safe and healthy communities that do not depend on prisons and punishment. And so here's a quote from Ruth Wilson Gilmore, who's still working on abolition to this day. Sorry. Can't actually, there it is, okay. "The purpose of abolition is to expose and defeat all the relationships and policies that make the United States the world's top cop, warmonger, and jailer. Abolition is a movement to end systemic violence, including the interpersonal vulnerabilities and displacements that keep the system going. In other words, the goal is to change how we interact with each other and the planet by putting people before profits, welfare before warfare, and life over death." And as we're on this slide, I want to think a bit more about some of the work that abolition needs, or what we do as abolitionists. And it's really looking at root causes of harm and root causes of structural violence, and then breaking apart the system at those root causes, or coming up with these systems that will reduce harm or influence or emphasize care more than anything. And I'm thinking kind of like a case study for us in Winston-Salem right now, and across the nation, is looking at the COVID pandemic happening right now and looking at where money is going. So looking at this idea of welfare before warfare and kind of reversing it, or people before profits and reversing it. But so now the Department of Justice has almost given out $1 billion to different public safety departments across the United States just in the matter of since April. Winston-Salem Police Department received $500,000 in May of this year, and the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office received $100,000, I think just a month ago. And the money that's being given to them is for the idea of like COVID relief, but really it's going to public safety. And we could think about abolition as looking at how can we change money from going to public safety and instead going to public health in a situation such as a pandemic. That's kind of something that's happening now. And we are on the topic of prison abolition, but I wanted to give kind of a brief overview of police abolition as well, since they do go hand in hand and they're part of the complex together. So this is from Brendan McQuaid's Pacifying the Homeland, but it's a case for police abolition in 3 parts. And the first is reduce policing now because policing is not about crime control. This is just saying that on average, I think a police officer or a patrol arrests 2 people per week. And so if you look at that kind of work, then really a lot of their work is also administrative or community policing or public relations. So reducing those parts of their work can be a way of like reducing them over time. The second one is police cannot be reformed because the essence of their power is the discretion to use violence. And police discretion means that they have the discretion to intimidate as well as use violence. So we've seen this a lot through being outside with the Occupy and having 55 arrests and seeing who is chosen at times to be arrested or the tactics they would use in those cases, as well as when we see police doing their work outside of protests. And the third is police do not enforce the law and are not accountable to it. And this is just looking at reducing the police size, but then still looking at how can we abolish court systems that uphold policing and law enforcement. Sorry. And so this is probably very hard to see on your screens, but it's easy to download this chart. It's from Critical Resistance, and it goes over these ideas of reformist reform versus abolitionist steps in policing. And so like how to reduce the size of the police force, how to reduce the size of who's going, like the numbers of mass incarceration. So I'd recommend looking at this on your own time and really studying it. But it's helpful in terms of thinking about this idea of like defund the police has become really popular in the wake of the death of George Floyd, but there's a lot more that we can do in terms of, you know, decreasing surveillance, decreasing civilian review boards that are still attached to elected officials that are making decisions over the police. So there's a lot of different intricacies in thinking about abolition. So this chart kind of gives an idea of what that will be like. And I know Celeste is about to go, but I did end with a slide of what you can do now with abolition in Winston-Salem. So these are just 3 points. Instead of calling the police every time there's a conflict, establish community forums or mediation practices to deal with harm and conflict. We can build safer and healthier communities by working to eliminate barriers in housing and jobs. I know that will be spoken to today. And we can continue building our community of care with shared abolitionist visions by joining and supporting our local grassroots organizations, which are really expanding right now in Winston-Salem, which is something I'm really hopeful about. So that's all I have for giving an overview of abolition. I can make these slides available as well for anyone who would like to have that option.
She's muted.
Yeah, thanks. I just realized that. Thank you very much, Bailey, for that overview of prison abolition. And so now I'd like to turn it over to Celeste Holcomb to talk about abolitionist work in Winston-Salem.
Thank you. So I'm Celeste. I'm a staff member at Wake, and I wanted to help with this because I was really eager to, or I have been really eager, along with other contract workers and staff members, to work in solidarity with faculty. And so this seemed like a really cool opportunity to build with the Wake community through hands-on work, where we could continue this kind of afterwards. We can work on these same issues all together in community. And I personally do this because I realize that my survival is dependent on the survival of others in my community. And a lot of what has threatened our survival is actually enacted by our justice system. You know, the kind of carceral effects of poverty, you know, being in jail because you can't pay your bail, being evicted, being deported. All these kind of things are huge threats to us, and they almost all kind of pass through the legal framework that we call the carceral system. And so these groups here, I invited them because they all address these things I didn't invite everybody, but I'm very excited that we all got together. We were all invited because we work directly to stop those harms from happening in our community, and everyone that works on that can actually make difference in achieving abolition, because those things can be stopped, and we can do it tonight, today, from this point on. So listen to everybody, sign up, and keep working with our community.
Thanks, Celeste. I'm really happy to build more relationships between staff and faculty, so that's great. So now I'd like to turn it over to Jackie Marina, who's going to tell us about the initiative, the work done by Siembra, North Carolina.
Hi everyone, my name is Jacqueline Marina. I am a volunteer member for Siembra NSE, and I appreciate being here with everybody. Thank you, Celeste, for inviting me and having this opportunity to speak. So I'm going to share, and I'm going to try to be really quick, because Siembra was created in opposition to the rhetoric, or the xenophobic rhetoric from Trump. And that, I believe, is around 2017. So the opposition is pretty much, you know, first off, his way of criminalizing immigrants, but also how he has ramped up targeting and terrorizing immigrant communities through ICE. So I'm gonna be like, try to hope that I can go through it quickly, because a lot of what we do is a lot. So let me know if you can see. Can you see this? Yes, okay. Let me open that up. Where is it? Okay, presentation. So this is our logo, Siembra NSE. We have Facebook, we have Twitter, and we have Instagram. Those are the areas where we're most active. I noticed that we have a website, but I don't know how active that is. Our Siembra is a group of immigrants, by immigrants, fighting for immigrant rights. It is a Latinx hub, political hub, where we're working towards, you know, having a life of dignity and respect, you know, because I believe that our Latinx population, our immigrant population, deserves the respect that, our families work very hard, and they work very hard for their children to have a better life. We're hoping that, you know, like, we'll be able to, like, continue with that work. So we implement several strategies, but one of the things we really really depend on and work really hard in is base building and relationship building. We think that creating relationships in the communities is going to help empower the work that we're doing. We do this in several ways. We do a lot of community outreach. We do a lot of organizing events. So we don't just kind of like have like go to a building and have events. We actually go to the neighborhoods itself, and we talk about, like, hey, you know, do you know what your rights are? Do you know that you have the power to protect yourself and the community? And so we share some of that information through just pretty much doing a lot of like events, including what we call horchatazo, or we do, horchatazo. So like, that's where we go to the neighborhoods where, for example, a family has been targeted or has been affected by ICE, and their family is going through this really like emotional, stressful situation. And we try to first off provide resources, support, and also give the family the opportunity to share, like, this is happening in their neighborhood. So we should probably let everybody know what's happening, so that way we can also share with them, like, okay, here are ways where you can protect your communities. By letting them know what their rights are, because immigrants do have rights according to the Constitution. So we try to educate our people about that, because not a lot of people are sharing that information the way our community deserves, which is like actually going out and canvassing. So that's a lot of, like, we do a lot of like physical work too, which is really tiresome, but it is worth it. And that's where the work is in. So that's some of the strategies we have. These are our principles, and what that means is core values. So like, and forgive me, because this presentation, I had to translate it because most of our presentations are in Spanish. So here are our principles. We are informed, we face our fears, we value our rights, and we contribute any way we can, and we're very diverse. So anybody is welcome in our space. It is a Latinx hub. So like, just because you are not able to, speak, like some of us are very talented in public speaking, that doesn't mean you can't contribute some way to the fight and to the movement. Everyone is valuable in our spaces, and we've tried to let them know, like, there are ways to help the movement. It doesn't have to always be public speaking, or it doesn't always have to be like, in the way that I'm doing right now. Like, there are so many ways. We also are in solidarity. Solidarity is very important for us. So for example, we've had people ask us, how can we help? And so we have solidarity work. So it looks like we're out of time. There's just so much that we do. So if anything, I want to leave with this, that we do have a solidarity committee. So if you ever want to know more about what ICE Watch training is, what court support is, and all of that stuff, I will leave an email on this chat so you can reach out. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate that. So next, I'm going to turn it over to Emily Thompson, who's going to tell us about the Forsyth County Community Bail Fund.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Emily Thompson. I am a third-year law student at Wake Forest. There's 4 of us on the board of the bail fund here. We all are Wake Forest law students, but we are not affiliated with the university. So we're not a club or a student organization or anything like that. We are an actual nonprofit. All of our donations are tax deductible. We formed in the fall of 2019, so about exactly a year ago, pretty much. We started fundraising early in 2020. So we did not start as a result of the protests that kind of erupted nationwide. We were already going at the time, but because of the protests and the added publicity, we were able to raise a lot more money than we thought we would this year, which has really allowed us to invest more in this community than we even thought possible. So it's been a really great first year for us. Early this summer, we officially joined the National Bail Fund Network, which is kind of like our parent organization. There's 60 bail funds that are part of that, 2 others in North Carolina, 1 in Durham and 1 in Alamance County. And they're part of the Community Justice Exchange, and they're really working to end prisons and policing and everything that kind of goes hand in hand with that. So we fully embrace that mission as a nonprofit, and most of our work is focused on pretrial detention specifically, just because that's what cash bail goes to. So how we kind of do it every week is we look through the jail roster at Forsyth County. Today we have about 600 people being detained downtown in our jail. We look through the names. The website is horrible. You have to pay bail in person. So it's really kind of a painstaking process to go through these names. We find people we think would be good candidates, but then we have to get a hold of them somehow, which has just been even made harder even now because of COVID. So we try to find their lawyer. We have a really great working relationship with the public defender's office here. So they usually help us track down their lawyers, and then we get consent because we never want to bail someone out who doesn't have the support outside of the jail, or maybe for their specific case, it makes more sense to stay in the jail. And so once we get consent, we go once a week to post bail for these folks. And it's located, the magistrate's office is in the basement of the jail. And we pay those bonds in cash. And ideally, if someone is able to go to their court date, we will get that money back and it's recycled, and we're able to use the same money and keep bailing people out week after week. So that's basically what we do here in Winston. We all love this community, and we're excited about working with other organizers to really invest in it. Our website is forsythcbf.org. We're on Twitter at Forsyth Bail, or Facebook. It's pretty easy to find us if you Google. So thanks.
All right, great, thank you. You actually ended a little early. I'm going to turn it over, because I'm sure we're going to use that time up. I'm going to turn it over to Dan Rose, a professor at Winston-Salem State, is that correct? Who's going to tell us about Housing Justice Now.
Thank you. Can you all see my screen, the PowerPoint? Okay, great. So we think that this work fits in really well with PIC abolition, because evictions, which have been our main focus, are a form of police violence. If you've ever been evicted, the sheriff comes out and threatens you with arrest for trespassing if you don't leave your own home at the time of a padlocking. Similarly, with hotel evictions, which has been a huge focus of ours in recent months, long-term residents are often being threatened by the city police, the Winston-Salem Police Department. So I want to be quick. I want to try to make it in 5 minutes. I've got a lot of slides, but I'm going to keep it moving. Want to give a brief history and acknowledge the fact that we are not the first group to be organizing for housing justice in Winston-Salem. We can go at least as far back as Local 22, the Union of Tobacco Workers at Reynolds Tobacco Factory, which was led predominantly by African Americans, and specifically African American women, were not only interested in workplace rights, but they called it civil rights unionism that extended beyond the gates of the factory and into the community. So Local 22 is one of the reasons why this union demanded public housing. One of the first public housing developments in the state of North Carolina was Happy Hill Gardens. Happy Hill, the oldest African American community in Winston-Salem. The Black Panthers in the 1960s took more militant measures in terms of eviction defense. As you can see on the right, the national newspaper highlighted some of the work going on in a very dangerous time here in the South as far as eviction defense went. So the history of Housing Justice Now, our group began in 2017. So in 2016, Matthew Desmond, in the eviction lab that he runs, identified the top evicting cities in the United States, and Winston-Salem was number 16 per capita nationally in evictions. So I believe if you're a tenant in Winston-Salem in 2016, your chance of being evicted that year was about 7%, which is very high. And it's up over 10% this year as we've seen the courts reopen and an enormous amount of eviction hearings taking place. So our group formed in 2017. Partially spurred by this idea that, you know, eviction is a crisis in the United States, and especially here in Winston-Salem, but also spurred by the idea that housing is a human right. So a lot of our work, I know personally, I've been inspired by not only Matthew Desmond's work to document the eviction crisis, but to theorize it. In Defense of Housing is a great book that looks at, you know, the history of public housing in the United States, the efforts that activists have been making for at least 100 years around housing justice. But we came together in late 2017 as a coalition of leftist groups. So Democratic Socialists, DSA, ISO, the International Socialist Organization, we all came together and decided that we would work here locally. And a lot of our early efforts were focused on building up community land trust, advocating for rent control, and those things were very difficult to achieve. They're still long-term goals of ours, Community land trusts require a lot of buy-in, a lot of capital in a town that is run by you know, nonprofits that are interested in maybe not doing things that give power to people, but rather keep concentrated power in the hands of, you know, their nonprofits. So we look to rent control as well as something that is prohibited by North Carolina law. Local municipalities cannot enact rent control on private developers. That's banned from Raleigh. And so we also work to develop short-term solutions, especially given the eviction crisis and know your rights information that we worked very hard to come up with that specifically tailored to Forsyth County and how people can fight evictions here locally. 2019, we really pushed efforts to get into communities and canvas, build tenants unions. Crystal Towers United is a product of our work along with the residents of Crystal Towers to have a voice to speak out against the sale of their building, which is still on hold, hopefully will be defeated. And we've really focused on eviction defense, and I'll get into that here in a second, but you know, currently our efforts are focused around just survival, and you know, 2020 is 2020. So we're continuing to try to adapt to this moment, respond to this moment, but also look to the future for long-term solutions. Strategically, and our strategy, you know, is well known at this point. If you look at our social media, we are canvassing in neighborhoods, again, Crystal Towers, working side by side with the tenants there to help build and sustain a tenants union. Cleveland Avenue, Ladera Crest, these are communities that if you're familiar with the, you know, low income renters market are communities that tenants really are seeking a voice or seeking a way to fight back. And so canvassing, certainly Cleveland Avenue was one of the first that we went out and listened. So canvassing and organizing is primarily about listening and working together and building something that that we're not necessarily you know, suggesting, but rather that they're coming up with, and we're there to support. So Cleveland Avenue, we've helped tenants beat evictions there. Everything from, you know, charging older African-American women with drug dealing that was just preposterous to telling people who had no neighbors that they were playing music too loud and their neighbors were complaining when they had vacant units next to them. So we were going out and listening to people's concerns, connecting them with resources, creating a support system. We look to build a hotline that has now, it's literally ringing right now on my phone. Thankfully, there's other people who are answering those calls, but working with Siembra to build a hotline for Spanish-speaking tenants who need assistance in knowing what their rights are, and essentially working to clog the court system. So this work was inspired by Metro DC, Stomp Out Slumlords that have worked for years to try to pack the court so that they cannot just keep evicting tenants in a smooth fashion where they're over and over. And so we have to find where tenants are being evicted. We have to go to them, you know, encourage them if they're willing to fight for their rights. Mobilizing resources, legal aid has been a huge assistance to us. They sought us out actually in terms of helping to identify folks in need. We're currently trying to get an injunction against sheriffs who are trying to evict this week with an eviction moratorium going on and people who qualify under that moratorium. I know I'm running out of time, but you have to do your research. You have to know who the slumlords are. We found this from minimum housing code violations in Winston-Salem. And above all, the resources that we are working with our neighbors, ourselves, you know, tenants, that we are the renters, we are the ones who are demanding affordable housing and decent housing. And so, you know, there's a tenant organizing manual. I can share any of these resources with folks, and New York City DSA has put this out for folks. And so thank you again for your time, and hope to stick around and answer questions later.
All right, thank you very much. I appreciate that a lot. So now I'm going to turn it over to, let's see, where are we? We're at Forsyth Court Support with Celeste Holcomb.
Hey. So Forsyth Court Support came together this spring as a coalition of existing projects, and we are, specifically focused on mitigating the harms of the carceral system. And some of the groups in our coalition have already talked here, but two other aspects of it are court watch and our jail support functions, and those are really important for keeping people out of jail, also for bringing transparency into the courts, which is I think Dan touched on this, is an extremely radicalizing factor. Our court system, just everything you see there is just mind-bogglingly immoral. And so if you can get, you know, the kind of bulk of your community participating in this system and seeing what happens, it's going to be much more likely that you can build in solidarity together. So we were inspired last year to build out a jail support system because we had members of our environmental group get arrested during the climate strikes, and it was very violent, and they arrested like 20% of this peaceful protest. And I helped with jail support with that, and we're like, we really need this as a backup. And through this last spring of all of our protest arrests, we have really learned that we could use jail support as a community service as well. So that's one of the ways that we're using it right now, is we're teaching people that if you're in jail, you don't necessarily have to stay in jail if you don't want to be there, because there are community funds available through the bail fund, and we can help facilitate this by having a hotline and volunteers to help people out. It also encourages the idea that you should not be stuck in jail. So it's, all these things are kind of better for just having known about them. That's part, yeah, that's why all of you are here. This expectation that you should go pay bail for your neighbors and stuff if they want to be bailed out. And the court watch started with housing justice now. The needs of our eviction courts were just staggeringly high, and we needed people to help provide the know your rights materials and help people appeal, help people even understand how to get to the courts. That's the other thing, like it's such a labyrinth, it's not meant for anybody to actually understand. And so we try to smooth that process out by getting people there in the courts participating before that bad day happens to them. That's really important. Like, we all need to be prepared. Like, what happens when one of your family members gets arrested? What happens when one of your family members gets evicted? So that community knowledge is very important for us. And we also are working with Siembra to hopefully build out their court accompaniment program. So there are a lot of issues that happen with immigrants in the court system. There's a lot of times where ICE will take people during that encounter with the legal system. So that's one aspect that we are working with the whole Siembra NC coalition to do. So yeah, I think I sent out that link, and it shows the other people in our coalition, so you'll kind of understand that this is like an umbrella within that is just bringing us all together, and we work very closely together. So I'll let it, I'll pass the mic.
All right, thanks very much, Celeste. Okay, let's see. I have to check where we're at in the agenda.
Oh, I forgot one really important thing. Our court watch training is at 7. And that's like, if you are interested in all this stuff, like, please join. I will share the link in the chat, so all of you can do that. 7 tonight on Zoom.
Thanks, Les. So again, that's 7 p.m. tonight. There's going to be a training for a court watch training that you can all attend if you're interested. Okay, so now we have break light clinics. I don't know why I cannot say that. Break light clinics with DSA, and our own Amy Meffin is going to tell us about that.
Hello, thanks, Christina. I also cannot say break light clinics. It's very difficult to say fast. I'm Amy Mepham. I'm the co-chair of the Winston-Salem chapter of the Democratic Socialists of America. Thanks very much for having me today. I'm going to talk briefly about break light clinics, their history in DSA, and the philosophy behind them. So to just begin, broken and burned out taillights are a main reason for traffic stops. And these traffic stops are yet another example of how racial profiling is used by police as a method of social control and state power. So as we've seen time and again, these stops are especially perilous to people of color and undocumented immigrants. So the idea for DSA's break light clinics, and I should say that, this is just one form of mutual aid. Obviously, mutual aid networks have been in place for a number of years for different organizations, but just specifically I'm going to talk about how this came about in DSA more recently. So the idea for DSA's break light clinics originated with Caitlin Marone. She was a council member at large for the New Orleans chapter of DSA. She was pulled over by police and fined for a broken taillight. Afterwards, while replacing her broken bulb, she reflected on the financial impact of the ticket, as well as the disturbing and hostile interaction that she had with police. She also realized as she was changing this bulb that the actual act of replacing the bulb was simple and relatively cheap. So it was a skill that could be easily taught to her comrades and then offered as a free repair at events organized by her DSA chapter. So the break light clinic is just is an excellent way of putting the principles of the DSA into practice. It helps people, first of all, keep from getting tickets and having to interact with the justice system. It's a way of building grassroots power outside of electoral politics. And it's a way to help people meet a basic need that can help build a stronger working class base to our movement and create solidarity in our communities. So the New Orleans chapter tweets about their first event went viral and led to other DSA chapters around the country organizing their own break light clinics. DSA New Orleans has even authored a DIY guide that can streamline the process for other DSA chapters to create similar programs for their communities. It's called Gimme a Break Light, and it's available online. I'll share it in the chat. So in fact, Winston-Salem DSA used this guide as we put together our own break light clinics. Last year, we partnered with Siembra to host 2 break light clinics, one at First Baptist Church on North Highland Avenue, where Reverend Paul Robeson Ford is senior pastor, and the other was held in the parking lot of Compare Foods. So I don't have the exact numbers. I apologize. I should have these and can get them to you if you're interested. But I believe we worked on 10 to 20 cars at each of these events and received a positive response from the host city each location. What's wonderful about this is that we don't just change the light, but there's conversations. People talk about their interactions with police at these events. So it goes beyond just the sort of almost transactional element of it. So we're in the process of organizing future clinics in a way that is safe and adheres to COVID-19 safety protocols. This does take place outside, so it is one of the things that we can continue to do in our organizing. So if you would like more information about Winston-Salem DSA, our meetings and events, you can find us on Facebook and Twitter. We're at Winston-Salem DSA. You don't need to be a member to be involved in these clinics or to attend meetings. So if you're interested in the work we're doing, please don't hesitate to contact us in general or me in particular. I'm going to include my personal email address in the chat and also the DSA email. So please feel free to contact me if you would like more information. Thanks so much.
All right, thank you, Amy. That was really helpful. Thanks. So now I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Brittany Battle, who is a professor in the sociology department here at Wake. And she is going to tell us about the work of the Triad Abolition Project and Occupy Winston-Salem.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Christina, Celeste, Mir, Tanisha, everyone who worked to pull this together. First of all, this is an amazing turnout. I'm so glad so many of y'all hopped on this Zoom to learn about what's happening in Winston. One thing I definitely want to say is that Breonna Taylor has still not received justice, and so she is one of the reasons why this scholar strike is necessary to begin with. So I just want to make sure that we're foregrounding, which I'm sure y'all are, but just making sure that we're re-foregrounding the reason that we decided some of us decided to step away from our work and then engage in this teach-in to bring some more information about work that's being done on the ground. In Winston, so yes, I'm with the Triad Abolition Project. You heard from Bailey Pittenger, who is another founding member of TAP earlier. Our primary goal is to dismantle white supremacy through the prison industrial complex. So we want to see no more arrests. We want to see no more handcuffs. We want to see no more law enforcement and policing as we know it, because we know that policing and law enforcement in this country cannot be reformed. What we have currently for policing is the reform. So we cannot reform the reform and make it better or more equitable for the people that are targeted and marginalized. We came together this summer. The first major thing that TAP did was organize a petition that garnered over 14,000 signatures to push Governor Cooper to veto SB 168, which was the piece of legislation that was going to basically make what we found out about Mr. Neville's case impossible to find out. And so I'll give you background on who Mr. Neville is in 1 second, but SB 168 was really trying to make it easier for law enforcement to cover up when they murder people. And so, as we know, they did an occupation in Raleigh. We sent our petition, and Governor Cooper, in fact, vetoed that bill. So organizing works. That's a very important thing to keep in mind. Organizing works. And so the other big thing that we did this summer was organize a 49-day occupation of downtown Winston-Salem that just concluded last week. That occupation was to demand justice for Mr. Neville and to push for policy changes that would prevent what happened to Mr. Neville from happening to anyone else in our community. So Mr. John Elliott Neville was incarcerated in the Forsyth County Detention Center in December of 2019. He was placed into a prone restraint after having what they claim was a medical emergency. He was unable to breathe and died. And this was kept from the public for nearly 7 months until our local officials announced what happened on July 8th. Immediately on July 8th, folks started organizing to demand justice for Mr. Neville. As many of you know, many people, 5 people that first day were arrested, myself included. And then we eventually began a occupation on July 15th. And so we were successful in the occupation in getting 2 primary demands met. One was to have the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office ban the bent leg prone restraint, which is a maneuver where they place someone on their stomach and fold their legs behind their back with pressure on their body, which causes grave injury and death in many instances. So we were successful in getting them to update their use of force policy for a complete ban throughout the agency. We also were successful in getting the sheriff to agree to notify the public when incarcerated people are killed in the detention center. And so what's next for us? We're still going to be working on dismantling white supremacy and dismantling the prison industrial complex. This is a multi-dimensional approach that we take. I've said this many times that the work that we're doing has many different dimensions to it. During our occupation, it was very important for us to educate the community, to connect the community with many of these amazing organizations that you see represented here today. So we had folks from, I believe, every organization that's represented on this call came out at some point to Occupy. We've had occupiers who have volunteered with all of these organizations. We're a research-based organization, so our goal is to really understand what these policies say, how they came into being, and how we can work to get them changed. A big thing that we do is march in solidarity with our incarcerated brothers, sisters, and siblings in the Forsyth County Detention Center. And so that will continue on Friday at 7:30. We'll be meeting at 3rd and Church to continue our tradition of showing our brothers, sisters, and siblings who are there in the detention center that we stand with them. Our eyes are on the detention center. We're there to make sure that they are not harmed. And just going forward, we are trying to build care networks for our community and engage in local work that makes sure that we're getting justice and responding, building ideas of safety in an abolitionist grounded framework. So I will stop there.
Thank you, Brittany, for that and for all of your work. And so now I will turn it over to Mr. Stubbs, who's the son of Mr. John Neville, and he's going to speak to us for a few minutes here.
Oh my goodness! I mean, hey man, everybody's come in and they've been so distinguished. You guys, I love you guys. I got to do it too, cause you know, I'm a star like you guys start. Okay. Me and my face right. All right. Hello. My name is Taylor Tremaine Stubbs. I'm a Winston Salem State graduate with a major in chemistry and a minor in physics. And John E. Neville was my father. That means something to me. I don't have a presentation. I don't have too much to come and say, you know, well, look at it, you know, and I understand everything. I appreciate everybody, but what I have is honesty. And what my honesty is let me take you back. March 5th, 2012, I was walking home one day and wasn't really doing anything to anybody. It was just minding my business. Saw an altercation between the police and a suspect, if you will, go down. And, you know, I tried to acknowledge it, but in my head and just keep going. And apparently somebody saw me stop. And so the police pulled up on me and they jumped out of their cars and they grabbed me. And nobody asked me my name. Nobody asked me where I was going. And I got grabbed by at least 5 officers in Winston-Salem. And then to top it all off, one of them tased me. The sixth officer tased me. And that was my first introduction to hope. Oh man, you know, it can get bad. It can get bad in the skin, you know what I mean? But I still try not to look at it as that. But then it happened again in 2015. And minus the tasing, but yeah, definitely face pressed against a brick wall on a hot day. Promises of, okay, we're gonna take him downtown, let him out in a couple hours and he'll be home soon. That wasn't the case. And the funniest thing about all these things is the charges were all dismissed. And then you turn around and on May 4th, 2019, my father, my blood, was just being arrested. He had just got arrested that night. He just got arrested that night. He was taking his sabbatical for the evening. You know, he was laying down and you know, something happened between him being in his bunk and him being on the floor. But next thing you know, he's on the floor with people not really regarding the fact that he's in pain, but regarding more so the fact that he knows that he's being out of line. And then next thing you know, he's in a chair with a spit bag on his face. And when he spits into that bag has a red stain on the front, which tells me something's wrong with his mouth or nose, or he's bleeding from somewhere. And then he goes to he doesn't go to an infirmary. He goes to a suicidal cell where people who gonna hurt themselves usually go. But then they leave him in there face down after all the time it took them to take the cuffs off that man. They leave him in there face down and he's not moving. And the nurse says, I think something's wrong. And it took her 15 minutes to do that. The whole time he still hasn't been in an infirmary. And the next thing you know, now we're applying life support. Now we're trying to breathe for him. We're doing CPR, but by then it's too late. The man's not even crying no more. His last words were, "Mama, please help. Stop. I can't breathe." He told him 24 times. I see in so many articles, so many different numbers. It was 24. I counted myself. I saw the video. It was 24 times that man counted for his life. And every time he got close to the 0. So without holding y'all, because I know I ain't got too much time, but you know what I'm saying? I'm here to say that everything y'all doing does have a purpose. Everything y'all doing does have a reason. Excuse me if I'm freestyling. Excuse me if I don't have nothing wrote. But this is where it's coming from. It's coming from a place of compassion and heart. I'm just out here right now. I actually got an organization of my own. It's called Silence is Violence. Silence is Violence means if you see pain in the world, I don't care what color, what creed, what type of character you have. If you see pain in the world and you don't speak on it, you hurting us too. Silence is violence. And me and Occupy, we like brother and sister right now. You know what I mean? So, you know, anybody that wants to get with me can get with me, but definitely, you know, he had a name. He did. His name was John E. Neville. Please say his name. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was really powerful and an important message for why folks are doing this kind of work. I know we're very much out of time, so we're coming on 6 o'clock, and so I know that many of our participants or our attendees may need to leave. But I also see that Lillian Podlog is here from Prisoner Outreach Initiative. Do you want to just say hi and like in a second what your organization does?
Yeah, I'll be really quick. My name is Lillian. I'm with the Prisoner Outreach Initiative. And I want to say I'm really excited to join today, specifically because this is a strike. And we know that our country is built on exploited labor. It's a system of racial capitalism, from slavery to Chinese laborers to the Filipino workers that built Silicon Valley that are so hardly recognized. So this system of racial capitalism, the way that we combat it, one of the ways that we can combat it is in that realm, which is through like capital and organizing collectively as workers. And so the Prisoner Outreach Initiative was founded in 2018 out of the 2018 prison strikes. And we know that the most exploited workers in our country right now are incarcerated workers. We know that slavery is only legal right now in prisons. And so in 2018, people risked their lives, smuggled in cell phones, and one of their demands was ending prison slavery. And so we were connected to one of the organizers in Hyde County, which is 5 hours away, middle of nowhere, that was organizing work stoppages in the kind of most harrowing conditions. And that's kind of where our organization comes from, is from this from Attica in 1971 to 2018 prison strikes, this tradition of working inside and outside in order to support incarcerated people asserting their collective power. And we're part of Forsyth Court Support, so Celeste shared the link, and that's all I have to say. If you want to get with us, our information is there.
All right, thank you very much. So first, I'm just going to say thank you to all of our presenters for coming and sharing your work with us and your wisdom with us. And thank you for all of our attendees for attending. And so I think a number of us are able to stick around for about 10 or 15 minutes. If you have questions, please go ahead and enter them into the Q&A right now, and we can potentially pose them to some of our participants. So let me give you all a moment. And then, you know, since we have just a minute, I would like, if it's possible, to just go really quickly around and I can call on folks so we're not speaking over each other. If you could just offer maybe one way for, so a lot of our audience is Wake Forest students, staff, and faculty. If you could offer one way for folks to get involved, potentially socially distanced or in person. So I'm actually just going to start, well, either Bailey or Brittany, one way for folks to get involved with the work of the Triad Abolition Project.
So you can follow us. We're on all social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, Triad Abolition Project. We post every time we're having any event. As I said, our event this week will be our March, and we'll be continuing since the occupation has wrapped up. We'll be planning some abolitionist teach-ins, virtual teach-ins coming up soon. So just follow us on social media. Everything's posted there all the time.
Okay, great, thank you. Forsyth County Community Bail Fund, one way for folks to get involved?
Yeah, soon we're hoping to get a program off the ground so folks can help us wait for people at the jail once they're released after we pay their bail. Right now it's just really hard because it can take us anywhere from 1 hour to 5 to even pay the bail, let alone when the person's going to come out. And we would love to offer them more resources once they do, like Lyft rides home and that kind of thing. So if you want to reach out to us on our email, it's probably the best way to get in touch with us.
Okay, great. And then I see actually there's a question coming in for Prison Outreach Initiative. So I'll just turn it over. Lillian, really quick, one way for people to get involved. And then the question was when the next meeting, your next meeting is going to be.
Yeah, I'll post our email if people want to get signed up, but we have 2 letter writings coming up. One, if you're a Winston-Salem State student, on the 28th, and the other is Saturday on the 20th. I don't have the times in front of me for the general public, but I'll post the email, and if you sign up, then you'll get that information.
And then Amy, I know folks can participate in the help out with the break light clinics themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. There's not one planned at the moment, but it will be. And if you want to know more information about that, yeah, just stay tuned on our Facebook page. Also, DSA is really involved with housing justice now, so I would send people to Dan as well. They're doing amazing work. And one more quick thing is, if you're a student, there is a YDSA chapter at Wake Forest. So if you're interested in that, please send me an email and I will be able to connect you with the person you need to talk to. Thanks.
So then I'll go from you to Dan. So one way to get involved in housing justice.
Great, thank you. We do court support every morning, and now there's so many evictions often in the afternoon as well. We stay in touch with volunteer opportunities via an app called GroupMe. So if you're willing to put another app on your phone and look for those opportunities. And we're also always looking for canvassers to actually go out into communities and help build tenant power that way. So just let me know, email, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, if you want to join us.
Okay, great. And then Trayman, did you want to let folks know, you mentioned your work with Silences Violence?
Okay. Can you hear me? Hold on, let me hold on. Make sure you can stop it. So you can hear me. Okay. So what Silences Violence is and if you want more information, you could probably get with Britt, because she knows a lot too. Silences Violence is an opportunity for people of all ethnicities. It doesn't have to be a Black people thing. This isn't a Black Lives Matter thing. This is a Lives Matter thing. Not even all lives matter, but just life. Life matters. And in that voice, whenever you say that, you have to wonder, well, then what hurts you in the world? Because everybody has something that they're bothered by, and they walk around with it every day, and they don't get to speak on it ever. That's what Silences Violence is. Silences Violence is an opportunity for anybody that has anything they have to say to come forward and say, I don't like that. No, we won't allow that. That's not going to happen anymore. And it's new. I'm you know, I had an event about 2 weeks ago, and it was a really big turnout. A lot of people came out who, they weren't rappers, they weren't dancers, they weren't singers, but they were people who had voices. And this is all this is. It's just the opportunity to give people a voice, because I'm walking around, and this has happened to my father. My friends are saying to me like, hey, well, what are you gonna do? You know, what I want to do something. And it's like, no, we're not gonna do nothing. I mean, we're not gonna loot, we're not gonna burn, we're not gonna ruin our community on, you know what I'm saying, on the pain, on the backs of people who put this pain on us. So let's release. You know what I mean? Let's channel our energy and release. And that's all Silences Violence means. Silences Violence means, as I said before, if you see it and it hurts you and you say nothing about it, then you're hurting yourself.
So if folks are directly interested in getting involved with Trey's initiative, I would say follow TAP social media, because I'm sure we'll be doing another joint event.
Event real soon, real soon.
Okay, great. Well then, thank you. And then I think, Celeste, any last things about how to get involved in the coalition?
Yeah, here, I'll send the link to our, the link that always will host or will share our upcoming trainings. And these trainings are like recurring, so that everyone who starts organizing with the jail support and housing justice now will continue to build together, because the idea is to promote self-organizing. So that's how tenants unions and stuff form, because we don't want to like organize them. So once you volunteer and become a court watcher or something, you become part of that community, and you can start working on organizing your own community as well. So I'll point out that the jail support, we're hoping that funnels towards the bail fund, and so that will be kind of a continuing thing. If you want to work with jail support, that will be part of the bail fund too. So yeah, but tonight's event, you can sign up until 7.
All right, well, once again, thank you very much to all of our presenters and to our attendees. And yeah, I encourage you to attend the in-depth training tonight at 7, and also to check out the Scholar Strike YouTube channel for more, some really excellent teach-ins on different topics related to white supremacy and mass incarceration, and just a variety of topics.
Question. Are we gonna be streaming this somewhere? Is this somewhere I can go back and look at this interview? Because this was very powerful.
Yes, so it is being recorded, and we will figure out where we're going to post the recording, but we will post it online so that folks who are not able to attend can watch it. So thank you for that.
Awesome, Celeste. You guys are great.
All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone, and I hope you all have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.